As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping on to the NBA Finals court, Curt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's the bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ILPsports.com today. That's the letters ILPsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we'll go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score that would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats Football History and its Memorabilia. The Gridiron Greats Publishing and Broadcasting and Network. We're in conjunction with Swick Enterprises, and we're live from the Southport, North Carolina home of Gridiron Greats Magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor at Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America that focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 150-plus years of football history and memorabilia. You can find us on the web at GridironGreatsMagazine.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host, the senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian, specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Largent. He hails from Portland, Oregon. Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
Great to be on the show again, Bob. I've missed talking to you.
Joe, glad to be back. And we're in for a very interesting show tonight. And when our special guest comes on, we'll have a very different type of introduction for him and a very different show this evening, talking about a subject near and dear to all football fans in our listening area. But before we get started, we're going to talk old yet new, and something that happened beginning on Saturday night and was played on Sunday and was played last night. And that's the new, old but new, USFL, United States Football League, the recreation, in a way, of the same teams that played from 1983 to 1985. At a time frame in my life, I was single until I got married the first time in 85, and I enjoyed many a summer and spring day watching USFL football on TV. And I was a big New Jersey Generals fan and enjoyed the games. It was a wide-open game. It was very exciting watching. And to me, it was a real nice break or segue into the fall season of CFL, NFL, and college football, high school football at the time.
Yeah.
And brought back a lot of memories for me. But Saturday night, I got the TV on, and I'm watching the Generals play the Stallions of Birmingham. And it was an interesting game, and if they had kept the momentum from the first two drives, it would have been a real shootout. And unfortunately, there was few blips along the way. Sunday, 2 games ended up being only 2 out of the 3 games played for the simple reason they had bad weather down there. And the third game got canceled, got played last night. The attendance on Sunday was pretty much non-existent, which I can see why. And even though there's more in attendance last night, it still was a little rough spot. And the play was interesting on Saturday, and it was even more interesting on Sunday. And Monday's game kind of just was a accumulation of everything put together of an idea once again of spring football. So my take on it is somewhat again. I'm trying not to be critical of it, but again, we're not looking at an NFL game in any way, shape, or form. We're looking at what amounts to being a semi-pro minor league football. And what we're looking at is some teams that really have got to play a little better if they're going to remain competitive for the season. And I think one of the big issues that they have in trying to develop a fan base, when you're playing all your games in Alabama, it's going to be tough for those other 7 teams to try to gain, a fan base, because I certainly am not going to drive down there to watch the Generals play. You know what I mean? So an interesting take on the entire concept of it. And I really don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, and you touched on a few things there. I caught a little bit of the Saturday game with the Generals. First of all, I didn't even notice that all the games were played in Alabama. I actually didn't notice it until you just said it. But, one of the big differences is, the USFL in, 83, 84 was a professional football league. They were drafting people out of college, notably, your Steve Young, Jim Kelly, Herschel Walker. And now they are considered now they're not. They're not trying to compete with the NFL. They're, like you mentioned, a minor league. It's, it's a farm team. It's people who want to get into the NFL, so they're playing hard. But and that's a big difference. And I didn't know that before I looked it up on Saturday. I was watching a little bit of the game. And that's another problem is I'm on the West Coast, so there's a time difference. They're televising them live, and they play them at a at a different time here. 8 teams again. The New Orleans Breakers were the Portland Breakers. So the original USFL had the Portland Breakers for a year, and then they moved to New Orleans. So the 8 teams again. The furthest west team is the Houston. So they're it's a completely East Coast league. The games are played East Coast time, as you mentioned. All of them in Alabama, which I didn't know until you mentioned it. And it's minor league, so it's going to be a tough go. Yep. So.
Now, one thing that's one thing that's interesting to note about the new league is that at playoff time they're going to be playing the playoff games at the Hall of Fame football field in Canton, Ohio, because there was some sort of scheduling issue down in Alabama there. So that might spark a little more interest in getting people, obviously, from Ohio there. But again, that's not a big stadium one way or the other to, gain people. But again, I can't really see them, getting a 40 to 50,000 crowd where they are now. And if you see the way, and you might have noticed at the game how they covered up big sections of the seats. And Sunday's just sad because they must have had like 100 people in the stands at the most. So, I know they had bad weather, so that definitely put people away. So that impacted them at the same time also. So it's interesting, again, and you made the very, very poignant comparison that you're looking at minor league football rather than professional football like you did in the mid '80s there.
Yep, totally.
So it's a completely different feel to the game. And as much as you want to try to remember back the 83, 84, 85 season of USFL, it's not going to be there. You know what I mean? So
a couple of cool things I liked is their play clock instead of 45 is 35, so the action was a little quicker. I liked that. Halftime was much shorter, so there wasn't this big pause and the action in between halves.
Yep.
Things just moved a little quicker. I think some of the things that are frustrating fans with the NFL right now, it's becoming a very rule-oriented, where it's just like nobody really knows what's definitive for a catch. I mean, did he have control? 1 foot in bounds? I mean, there's so many little nuances to, I remember watching, on Monday Night Football, they used to have the "you make the call," things where they show some, a play, and then they'd, you make the call, and then a commercial break, they'd come back and, those are great, and it seemed like we knew the rules. We could make a definitive answer, and now it's tough. It's a lot more passer friendly. So I mean, you look sideways at the quarterback, and it's a penalty. You put a hand on a receiver, and it's a penalty. It's very offense rated, or geared. The rules are nowadays, and we want to protect our quarterbacks and our stars, but at the same time, you hear a lot of people complaining it's turning it into a two-hand touch league.
Right. And I agree with that 100%. And and I always say, I watch a lot of this past season. I watched a lot of high school football down here, and I tell you, it was just nice to see actual plays play out, and you could actually see some continuity on the field because you don't have 100 timeouts for commercials, so there's an actual flow to the game. You know what I mean? And I think the bigger problem with the NFL continues to be just the sheer number of the TV timeouts that really are distracting to the game and distracting to the flow of the game. And I just think they would be better off doing like a pocket of 7 to 8 minutes of commercials after the quarter is over, and at least play out the quarter. But I know it'll never happen because obviously they're finance driven, and they're going to sell as many ads as they can possibly can, and that's the function of the game today. So it'll be interesting. I got a feeling I got a feeling this USFL is on a little better financial standing than the American Alliance for Football from a few seasons back that didn't even make it through the year. And again, I rank the play basically the same as that. I mean, there's really not that much difference to me. And I still enjoy watching the good arena football. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I didn't bother looking up who owns the teams. I mean, obviously, the New Jersey Generals, the Breaker. I mean, I'm curious who owns the teams, where they financed by.
That I got to research a little more because I'm under the impression it is like a corporation that owns the league, and they in turn own the teams. But I got to check on that a little more closely. And some of the information on the league is pretty guarded, and other information is much more readily available. So it's interesting to see. It's it's trying to be spring entertainment once again. And again,
I wish them well.
Yeah,
I wish them well. As you've got a tattoo on your inner thigh that says football 24/7. So here we are. Anybody who's trying to put spring football in, I wish them well. I tip that because you just nailed it. I go to high school games. I live about half a mile from a high school, and I had my electric company sponsor them, so we get sideline passes. We get they invited me to call a game once, and I'm like, nah, I don't have the Bob Swick voice to call a football game. But I have season tickets to the University of Oregon Ducks. I love watching football. I probably went to about 4 high school games this year, 3 college games, and off we go. Yeah, 24/7, man.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. So we'll see what happens as the season goes on. Our special guest is here tonight, and we have a different guest than normal, but once our listeners start to hear his field of expertise, it will be very interesting for them to learn about a subject that's very dear to many football fans' hearts. At this time, I'd like to introduce our special guest. He's written for 30 years for American Track and Field, along with Run Blog Run. He is the former president of the Staten Island Athletic Club and chair of the Staten Island Running Association, was the fifth-man scorer for his Susan Wagner High School New York City cross-country city championship team. He was also a member of the College of Staten Island Sports Hall of Fame for cross-country. He serves currently as the long-distance running chairman for the USA Track and Field Foundation out of New York, a passionate or fanatical follower of the sport. Some of his subjects have included Sebastian Cox, Emma Coburn, Coughlin, Matt Centrowitz, Jim Spivey, Galen Rupp, Joe Newton, Tom Fleming, A.J. Wilson, Bill Rogers, Alan Webb, Abel Kiviat, Jordan Assay, Marty McClure, Castor Samana, Rod Dixon, Carl Lewis, and Jim Murray, as well as book reviews and articles covering meets and races in the northeastern part of the United States. At this time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jeff Benjamin to our show. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, although I think I would border more on the fanatical than passionate. But then again, I think all of us are definitely passionate about the sports that we love, for sure.
Jeff, thanks for being on the show. This is Joe. Thanks for being on the show. I loved your articles that you wrote on Jim Thorpe. And as I mentioned when I was emailing back and forth, Jim Thorpe's one of my favorite, players to collect. He's just, entrenched in, NFL history. And anybody who's, got the gumption to write an article about Jim Thorpe, I want to talk to him about it.
I appreciate that. It was no easy feat, believe me. Looking into Jim Thorpe has opened a lot of doors to me in my life, meeting remarkable people. And, as I get older, I remember years ago, ESPN had that TV show, The Sports Century, back in, it's still on now, but they had a Sports Century in 2000 where there's 100 episodes, where they ranked the 100 greatest athletes of the 20th century.
Yep.
And I remember they went backwards. There was like 2 shows a week, to fill out the 52 weeks, so to speak. And if I'm correct, I believe Thorpe was number 3. And then I believe it was Babe Ruth, and then they had Michael Jordan. So if I remember correctly. And, listen, whenever you make up a list, we could argue a lot of stuff, modern technology, the nutrition, equipment, training of today versus the past, fields, the conditions, the way people lived 100 years ago compared to today. There's a lot of variables. But the more I get older, the more I study Thorpe. And, you got to be careful a little bit because there is some exaggerations out there. When you really hold on to the, valuable sources that are pretty, good, boy, this guy was incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah. Yep. He changed football. He paved the way. Between him and Red Grange, probably, the foundation of the NFL we know today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he was the first president of the NFL as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. I have a picture of Jim Thorpe that hangs in my office of Jim Thorpe sitting at his desk. And obviously it's a photo op. It's him signing a piece of paper. There's nothing else in the room except for a coat rack and nothing on his desk. I'm like, poor Jim, obviously made the president because, he was the name, before, Carr. But it's yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great photo you have. And I have a few things as well. It's a little bit of an off-the-cuff story, but in like 1951, just before Jim passed away, he was at some kind of fly fishing event, and he met Ted Williams, the great hitter. And there's some photos of that online and stuff, and Topps actually made a card of them together, which sells ballpark between like 500, depending on the condition. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of funny, suppose, I would say the greatest hitter in baseball meeting the greatest athlete, Yep. So, but no, he's very, very remarkable, very, very remarkable guy. My gateway to Jim Thorpe came through a Staten Island connection. Abel Kiviat, who in 1912 was the first ratified world record holder in the 1,500 meters, the mile. He said it 3 times in 1912 going to the Stockholm Olympic Games. And Abel would go on to win a silver medal in that race, which some people consider the greatest race ever run. And then he later on won a gold medal in a defunct 3,000-meter relay. But his big thing is that he and Jim were roommates on the boat going to Stockholm. A lot of athletes classified as minorities were thrown into steerage. And, Kiviat was down there with him. And if any of your viewers want to Google Abel Kiviat on YouTube, there's a 15-minute piece where the Olympic producer from years ago, Bud Greenspan, in 1984, brought Abel back to the Stockholm Stadium where he performed like 70 years earlier. And Kiviat, very animated, tells some great stories about Jim Thorpe, which I don't want to reveal here. I want people to, Google it and check out the video. Really great. And, Kiviat does say he's the greatest athlete he ever saw. He would see him actually sitting in the stands watching him play for the New York Giant base team for a season, before he embarked on his NFL stuff. But we got to know Abel here on Staten Island because Abel died in 1991 at the age of 99. I mean, he was a living legend in our borough, and I was fortunate enough to meet him a bunch of times. I remember one time we were driving Abel back to his retirement home, and one of my friends said, "Mr. Kiviat, would you mind if we came in to look at your awards?" And Kiviat said no, and my friend said, "Why?" He said, "You don't got time." And we did go in, and there was a plethora of stuff, meets like the Milrose Games, national championships, all that stuff. And one thing that I find kind of unfortunate is that the story of Jim Thorpe has kind of become like a 20th century biography thing. Like, I remember being in 4th grade in school, and I'm 57, and you read biographies on famous Americans, not only from presidential, political history, but all kinds of history. And we read Jim Thorpe, and Jim Thorpe's really not taught very much anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Jeff, to lead off our question and answers tonight, you obviously are a great friend and champion of the clause to restore Jim Thorpe's Olympic wins. Now, how did you become such an advocate for him and the Olympic medals?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Basically, most of us are aware. Like I said, the younger generation might not be aware. I still teach here on Staten Island. I actually do teach a sports history class. Many people are unaware of Jim Thorpe. And basically, here's the situation. Up until 1988, to participate in the Olympic Games, an athlete had to be an amateur athlete, meaning they could not make any kind of money based on their athletic reputation or their athletic performances. Okay? If they did, and they already participated in the Olympic Games prior, they could be stripped of everything. Okay? What they did after the Olympic Games is irrelevant. Bruce Jenner would win the 1976 decathlon gold medalist, and after those Olympics, Bruce, now Caitlin, made a ton of money in all the ventures that she has done ever since. But what people don't realize about Jenner is that leading up to those Olympics for a 7-year period, Bruce lived in an apartment where he had to train every day, and his girlfriend had to work to support them, because you could not make money based on if you showed up to a clinic, if you showed up, if you tried to open up a store based on your athletic stuff, you were banned, and you had a real, by the book, some people would say harsh, people who ran, Olympic sport, who really strictly enforced this. I mean, strictly. Okay. And the big guys at the top during that era in 1912 were Avery Brundage and Dan Ferris. And Brundage would later on not only run the U.S. Olympic stuff, but the World Olympic stuff. He was chairman of the IOC until his death in the late 70s. And what happened with Jim played Carlisle football, as we all know. And that was college. But during the summertime, his coach, Pop Warner, would farm out his athletes to play some minor league baseball, semi-pro baseball. And, with all due respect, Jim was probably paid, enough for room and board, nothing extravagant. But most of the Native American players on the Carlisle team would use fake names so that they wouldn't get caught up in this amateur thing if they decided to become Olympic athletes, right? However, Jim Thorpe was a fraud. Jim just kept his name and kept on and played semi-professional baseball, I believe, in the summer of 1911. So when he went to the Olympic Games and the Olympic trials to make the team and then the Olympic Games, technically this was dug up, I think, like a year later, that, he had been paid money to play semi-professional baseball. Okay. And that led to his losing his medals and being stricken from the record books. Okay. Now, there's a lot of controversy with that. First of all, the International Olympic Committee rules gave a certain time period where you were supposed to report that athlete. And, for years after that, and especially after Jim Thorpe passed away in the 1950s, people led a big crusade to try to get his medals restored. As Abel Kiviat said, the guy was just paid like meal money and, rent, and considered very disgraceful by a lot of the athletes. But the powers that be really controlled this stuff really seriously. Yeah. So along came a fellow named Robert Wheeler with his wife, Flo Ridlon, and Robert Wheeler would write the paramount biography of Jim Thorpe, which was published in the early 70s. And Bob Wheeler spent his life traveling around the country, hitching rides, paying taxis to meet people such as President Dwight Eisenhower, who played for Army against Jim Thorpe, Burt Lancaster, who played Thorpe in the only movie ever made back in 1952, and hundreds of other people. And the big thing that Bob Wheeler and his wife were also promoting was the restoration of the medals to the Thorpe family. And Bob Butterly, who's still alive and at a young, I think, late 70s, age of the state of mind for Bob, his passion is still there. He even went to Avery Brundage, and Brundage, for some reason, gave Bob access to some of the Jim Thorpe stuff, which Bob never thought he would see. And it was his wife, Flo, who found out that the IOC rule of, Thorpe being reported a year after the event. And so in 1984, the IOC restored the Thorpe family with 2 gold medals from the pentathlon and the decathlon. They're not the original ones, but they were given.
But he's still listed. He's not listed as the sole winner, which is one of the the problems.
Right, that is the problem, because whenever I talk to people, and I even interviewed Caitlyn Jenner a few years ago about the Jim Thorpe stuff, and Caitlyn even said, "Wait a second, he got the medals back, so is the record book restored?" And the answer is no. The IOC still does not list Thorpe as the sole winner. So Bob Wheeler, along with some other key people, Nedra Darling, Abraham Taylor, and a few others, have led a movement called Bright Path Strong. And Bright Path Strong is the name of the movie that is in the works right now, which will hopefully be out eventually. And Bright Path Strong petition, which you could find online, just Google Bright Path Strong petition, is asking people to sign so that they can send eventually to the IOC all these signatures saying that, Thorpe should be listed as the undisputed champion of these events.
Sole winner.
And, from an NFL perspective, the Doug Williams Institute is also a big ally with this push. They published something really huge about 3 months ago, basically, once again, raising this idea that, a great injustice was done. And, Thorpe also demolished his competition, as many people know. It wasn't even close in both events. So, and, like I said, in that era, you won a certain athletic event. They awarded you with a camera. You had to decline the camera. You could take a watch because it was valued less, but a camera was too expensive. If you took the camera, you were banned. Like, these archaic rules that were happening during this era, fortunately today they're not around pretty much anymore. But, for
I remember and I remember in '88 when they went away with that. And then you had in 1992, you had the Dream Team basketball that went on to decimate all the amateurs. And that was beginning.
Hey, it would be great if the Winter Olympics has American football. We could throw some NFL guys in there.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so you touched us a little bit. We have some questions later on that touch on this, but you mentioned movie Bright Path. I mean, it's coming up following the Bright Path Twitter handle. For quite a while, just some amazing information on on Jim Thorpe, and that's where I saw you posting up some of those articles you wrote. It stars Martin Sensmeyer as Jim Thorpe. It's produced by Angelina Jolie, which is obviously going to be put some star power to it. How did you get involved in the movie? I think you were brought on as a consultant.
Yeah, so somewhat loosely. Basically, when I started writing a little bit about Thorpe in 2016, I was actually contacted by Bob Wheeler. And Bob has become like pretty much my de facto uncle, my uncle figure. And but Bob and I do talk quite often. And Bob is a, there as that like any production, there are always producers listed with many names. So, I know you mentioned Angelina Jolie, but Bob is also a producer, as is Abraham Taylor. And also from the NFL circles, Giant owner Steve Tisch is also listed as a producer. So, wow. And basically, like I said, they've been going full speed ahead, but I think the COVID has slowed them down significantly. And, Hollywood, I think everybody would agree, is a very strange place when it comes to making a movie of some sort. And, I would think if the COVID had not hit 2 years ago, I think filming would have absolutely been underway at this point, in my own opinion. But like I said, I know that they're still working on it. They're still trying to get it done, and it's definitely in the works. It's just a matter of when are they going to be able to get this film done, From another perspective, by the way, what's going to be easy, because talking with some of these people involved with the film, filming at the Stockholm Olympics is not going to be that difficult, because the outside of the Stockholm Olympic Stadium looks the same as it did in 1912. The town of Carlisle, and I have a second house in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and Carlisle is only like 20 minutes away. Carlisle itself, the main streets, the areas around there, still have that 1900 flavor. And the Army War College, which back then was called the Indian School, where Thorpe was discovered, their track, which is dirt cinder, the football field, the stands are still the same from pretty much 1911, 1912. So, like, it's almost like hallowed ground. So if they're looking to film in those areas, they should have no problem. But like I said, that's logistics, and I'm not a Hollywood guy. I don't know for, what they're all planning to do. But they really want to get this movie going, and at the same time, they're paralleling it with the petition, imploring people to please read the petition and please sign it.
Yeah. About a year ago, I went on Google Earth and took a tour around the exterior of that Stockholm stadium. But like you said, it is the exact same. And you can hold a postcard up showing the exterior from the 1912 Olympics, and you can look at the Google Earth map, and it is nearly identical. But how are you involved in the movie? I think at some point it was mentioned that you were brought in as an expert or something like that.
Well, I'm more involved from the track and field perspective, and also from the Abel Kiviat perspective.
That makes sense.
The one thing is, like, obviously whenever they're writing a script, they're looking at different angles, different things to include. I do know that the major theme, which tragically has followed Jim Thorpe since 1912, is the injustice that was done to him. And one wonders, if it's racially motivated and things like that. Even Abel Kiviat, who was Jewish, he was banned for about 6 years over the violation of amateur rules. He was asking for transportation money to run a meet up in Buffalo. And, by asking them for money, he got a 6-year ban. But Abel got a lawyer, went to court, took on the governing body, and he won. So the injustice thing is definitely what they're looking at. And, with the Carlisle Indian School, those schools, which have been in the media a little bit recently, there was one in Canada that was mentioned well recently, their goal was to Americanize these Native American kids. The Native American wars had ended around 1870, 1880. So 1912 is not a long time after. So, kids were sent there. They had their heads shaved. They had to become Christian. They were given white names. And without a doubt, there was definitely physical, emotional abuse, which sadly took its toll on a number of these students. Like, if you go to the Army War College today, as soon as you go to the gate, there's a cemetery right there, about 180 graves of Native American children who died at the Carlisle Indian School. And when you look at the graves, most of them have white names with the name of their tribe that they were from.
So
from what I know, like, with a lot of Native American religious belief and culture, many tribes believe that they have to be buried in the land of their ancestors. If they're buried not in the land of their ancestors, they feel that their soul wanders blind forever. And I know recently I read they exhumed two bodies from the Carlisle Indian School and sent them to, I believe it was Lakota Indian Reservation to be buried.
Mm.
But why do you
go ahead,
Jeff? Why do you think at that time or even up until this time? And I know you wrote a blog entry one time where Thorpe, being a Native American, was actually edited out of it. Why do you think, for whatever reason, they did not want to refer him, A, to being a Native American, and B, how did his life parallel from being one of the greatest athletes in the world to a man who basically died in poverty? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny you bring it up. Bob Wheeler has a lot to do with that as well as his wife, Flo. The big mystery we have is that there is a fantastic International Olympic Committee released DVD movie set. I think you can download it now too, Famani, which has like 3.5 hours of the 1912 Olympics. Some of them in full events, including Abel Kiviat's 1,500-meter silver medal race, right? However, when you come to Thorpe, the only thing available on that film for Thorpe is when he receives his awards from King Gustav of Sweden, where he wins the award for the decathlon and the pentathlon. The athletic events are nowhere to be found. And so what happened was Bob Wheeler found somebody in Oklahoma who knew the Thorpe family and had one of those old reel films, that are in those metal cases and all that stuff. And they went through it and apparently there was like some kind of like cut or some kind of marker all through the Thorpe stuff except for a few frames. So the article I wrote it's a photo that Bob took from the film of Jim Thorpe doing the pole vault at the Stockholm Olympics for the decathlon event where you run with the pole and go over. And all we have is a photo, but not video. And I guess the great question is, who did that? What, were they looking to just erase him, from film as well as from the record books? We do not know. And by the way, it's a little trivial thing. From what I read, Thorpe never did the pole vault before in his life until he went to the Olympic Games to and the decathlon is 10 events. I believe Thorpe at the Olympic trials to be selected for the team in New York City. He did the first day 5 events, and they were like, "Oh my God, he's so good! You're on the team. Don't worry about the others." And some people say Thorpe was a great visualizer. He could watch somebody do something, for 20 minutes, and then get up and do it. But Thorpe trained as well. There was always this little stereotype, that maybe he was like lazy and things like that. But according to Kvyat and according to Wheeler's research and others, Jim trained as well. He had great natural ability without a doubt. But, he definitely was training, and there was definitely a dedication aspect. The one hope, by the way, with the missing film, which we try to get out there, is that maybe somewhere, we're thinking maybe in Sweden, Swedish military filmed those Stockholm Olympics in 1912. Maybe somewhere in an attic, in one of those metal cases, is the full film of Thorpe's decathlon. That would be like finding, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The one thing is, though, time is not a friend with old film. A lot of that film, rots out in the metal containers.
I forgot about this until I read your blog, but Thorpe wasn't even an American when he competed in the Olympics. I mean, Thorpe was Native American. Thorpe was Native American. Kvyat was Jewish. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, was he edited out because of that? I mean, is it that bad? I guess. I mean,
these are great questions, and they have perplexed people for years. And by the way, I did want to let you know that the New York Times author Dave Moranis is in the process of finishing up his brand new book on Jim Thorpe, his brand new biography on Thorpe. It should be out sometime this summer. And the question is that, we're all following, because Moranis is a great writer. His book is called Path Lit by Lightning, The Life of Jim. And, people dig up historical stuff. And Moranis, like I said, is a phenomenal writer. He's a award-winning writer. Did he find any new stuff out there? The other question is, too, Thorpe's football coach, the great Pop Warner, who you guys would know more than me, but I believe, he revolutionized the game. But the question is with Pop Warner made a lot of money off of his Native American athletes as well. So, he would farm them out, and he was being paid to be the Carlisle coach, also getting kickback money for the Native American athletes. And if I'm correct, you guys might want to look into this. I believe that he was also made a co-head coach of another college somewhere where he never showed up, but would send strategies, workouts by telephone or by snail mail.
Yeah, and Pop Warner's one of those guys. Going back to, like you said, people said Thorpe was lazy. I mean, it's pretty common knowledge. We had a friend who wrote a very in-depth article on Thorpe, and apparently Thorpe wanted to marry his wife, and the father of the wife said, if you win the if you can prove yourself, perhaps we'll consider it. So apparently Thorpe trained like on the boat ride over, and I have a picture of him on that boat, mid training, like running, lifting weights, etc. I mean, apparently Thorpe trained and was, a physical specimen by the time he made it to Stockholm. But Pop Warner is one of those very polarizing figures, because if you think about, Thorpe being sold down the river, to the IOC stripping, at any moment Warner could have raised his hand and defended Thorpe. probably got, but he did no such thing. In fact, the opposite. So I mean, Pop Warner's one of those people that, to us Jim Thorpe fans, is he's the Judas to me. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Pop Warner because of that.
Yeah, no, I get it, and it's funny. There's another great writer who lives in the Carlisle area, Tom Benjy, Benjey, who writes about Carlisle football. This guy knows like everything, and I've been very grateful for his friendship. The one thing, talking with Bob Wheeler and Benjy and others, is that for the rest of his life, Thorpe never bad-mouthed Pop Warner. He just never did.
It's too nice.
Like I said,
nice.
People are complex, and I think Thorpe had that relationship with him.
Yep. IOC came for Thorpe's medals, and he never argued. He never tried. He just handed them over. He was too nice. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe he was subjected to being treated like a Native American for most of his life, so he didn't think it was worth it. Who knows? Like you said, it's complex.
Yeah, it's funny because in that ESPN series, The Century, Jim Thorpe, and once again, I think you could find it on YouTube as well. John Thorpe, his son, when he was asked by the why'd your dad give up the medals and stuff? He goes, well, you know what? I asked my dad that once, and he said, people don't remember, the Indian Wars were only over 25 years earlier. And he claimed his father said, we had enough problems understanding English than knowing the rules.
That's true.
That's from Thorpe's son, but Jim was massively loyal to Pop Warner, like massively to the end. So, like I said, people are very complex. Well, like I said, this new book coming out by Dave Moranis. We'll see, what he has.
Yep. I don't know. I've sat and wondered if Thorpe knew, how little Warner did to defend him. But I don't know. You mentioned how crushing, Thorpe was in the Olympics. In 2012, I did an analysis on 100-year anniversary of this. I went in and looked at every single, final, time, heights, whatever, shot put from the decathlon and the pentathlon. And then I looked in every Olympics from that point on to see how long Jim Thorpe's record stood. And many of them stood until the 50s.
That's right. Probably
Thorpe,
until Bob Mathias came along and I think broke a few of them.
Jim Thorpe, who ran on cinder, who did day one of the 1912 Olympics in mismatched shoes because somebody stole his shoe. I mean,
that's right.
That's how much of an athlete he was, to set the bar so high, even in pole vault, something he'd never done before. It's just, what a great athlete. So,
one of the things he did as well, during the Great Depression, he did have jobs like digging ditches and stuff, but he was also in Hollywood.
Yep.
And Thorpe's in some movies that are stereotypical for the time. He plays like the evil Native American kind of thing. But there's a couple of films in there, they're very rare and very hard to find, where, he's doing the drop kick with the football. He's playing a little football in these films, and he's acting things. And the other thing that Thorpe also fought for was rights for other Native Americans, to get a fair wage being in these movies.
Yeah. I have a photo of Jim Thorpe digging a ditch in 1932 in Los Angeles that I keep above my desk as a reminder to stay humble.
Yeah. And, also from his personal perspective, I know you mentioned some things. He was married, I believe, 3 times. Had a bunch of children. And he did spend the last years of his life, I believe, in a trailer. But the question, we're not sure if it was seriously related to money situations. It might have been, but one of his sons once said, people don't understand Dad. Dad was a Native American. Native Americans don't plant stakes in the ground and live there forever. They like to move around. And you wonder if that was part of his MO as well.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. But look, the fight still goes on for Thorpe, and it's just amazing that in today's world, the powers that be have been very resistant on the international level. There's one person though that we're holding out hope for. World Athletics is now the governing body for track and field around the world. And Sebastian Coe of Great Britain, who is a former mile world record holder, 2-time gold medalist in the Olympic Games, is the chairman of the World Athletics. And he is now a member of the IOC. And the IOC is a huge group. I mean, a lot of bureaucracy, personalities and stuff. But Seb does want to see Thorpe's records get restored legitimately to the way they should be. So, like I said, there's some positives going on. We just have to keep the movement going. And if people listening to this podcast would seriously consider just signing the petition, Bright Path Strong petition, that would be a great thing. And the website also sells some really cool swag, as I like to say. I have these 2 shirts of Jim Thorpe, and I go to a track meet, and people go, "Hey, where'd you get those shirts?" Oh, cool. And it's all part of raising money for the Bright Path Strong, movement. So, but, they're really trying. They're pushing for things. I know they've talked to NFL owners about possibly setting up petition drives at games. But from a track and field world, in my world, the greatest thing to happen to America with track and field is actually happening this summer. From July 15th to July 25th, the World Outdoor Track and Field Championships, the first time ever they will ever be in the United States. And they're going to be held in Eugene, Oregon. It's probably the brainchild, the movement probably started from that, from Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike, who, if you know anything about his background, Phil Knight is a trackaholic. And, he built a brand new Hayward Field Stadium, multi-million-dollar stadium there that's beautiful. And
Jeff,
like I said, we're going to be there.
I live in Portland, Oregon, which is about
a mile,
you should, about an hour and a half north. And,
I'll give you a little business advice. You may want to put your house up for rent during that week because people are having a difficult time finding places to stay.
I go to U of O games all the time. I've been to Hayward Field for the Olympic qualifications before. It is, and they just absolutely remodeled it. It is stunning.
Yes, it's beautiful, beautiful. And like I said, who's who of world track and field will be there because many of the late great Olympic gold medalists who are still with us are members of federations. So, you could be with the Cuban Federation and see the boxer Stevenson hanging out, or Alberto Juantarena, the great sprinter, or, famous athletes from all over the world who will definitely be converging on Eugene this summer. And I'm hoping that the Bright Path Strong movement, they'll definitely set up a petition thing there because I think track and field people, along with football people, would want to see this kind of injustice come to an end.
I'll pick up the swag. My wife is on the endowment committee for U of O and wear my Bright Path shirt down there.
All right, that'd be great. That'd be great. I'd love to see you there too. So, listen, I've only been to Eugene a few times, but I saw that pancake place, so I could definitely take you out there if you want.
And Jeff, by the way,
but with all these people coming, it's going to be interesting to see logistically how the whole area handles it.
Yeah. Oh, they know how to do it. But we refer to Phil Knight as simply Uncle Phil, our rich uncle.
Yeah, that's a good name. Yeah. I mean, he was a guy. He was a guy who was a 4:10 miler, which is pretty good, not Olympic stuff.
Yeah.
And he got together with his coach Bill Bowerman and a few other people, and they designed a shoe. And if I remember the story correctly, Phil wanted to call his company Fifth Dimension Running Shoes, and. I believe it was one of his cohorts there who was a big Greek mythology person and said, no, we should name it Nikia for the Greek goddess of victory, Athena's daughter. And Nikia is spelled Nike. And I believe that guy, Jeff Johnson, to this day is still not happy that the company is called Nike. He's like, they all pronounce it wrong. It should be Nikia.
Oh, interesting.
Nikia.
I know that.
Yeah.
Jeff, we only got a few more minutes, and just want to get a couple more quick questions. And do you collect anything with an Olympic theme or anything of Jim Thorpe?
I'm sorry, what was that question again?
Do you collect anything with an Olympic theme or anything with Jim Thorpe?
Yeah, in recent years, I've driven my wife crazy by purchasing some things. The greatest thing, if anybody wants to check out eBay or check out a site, there are Jim Thorpe football cards that were published in the 1950s and even the 30s. The 30s ones are very expensive. There's also there's also a card of Thorpe from 1912 in Stockholm, which is selling for like $900,000 or something like that. You know,
there's a couple of them. There's a couple of them.
I wish.
There's a couple of 1912 cards. Yeah, I'm a big Jim Thorpe collector. I know every card you're talking to a couple of collectors. Bob is the publisher of Gridiron Greats, which is a quarterly magazine about football collecting. So trust me, you're in the right room, Jeff.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I did purchase from a guy in Carlisle. There was a book written called The Fabulous Red Men, and it's about Carlisle football. And the author did a book signing in, I guess, 1951 or so when the book came out, and Jim Thorpe was president at the book signing. And apparently the author signs the book, and every book that was passed to Thorpe, he wrote, "Me Too, Jim Thorpe." So the author would write best wishes from the author. He'd put "Me Too, Jim Thorpe." And I was able to purchase one of those about 2 years ago.
Oh, incredible. Nice.
Wow.
So
and I have the receipt from the store. I have there was a Native American agent. He called himself an Indian agent with a business card in the book. Things like that.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because, in the world of like collecting stuff, you don't know what's in somebody's attic. You don't know, what's in your uncle's drawer. You never have an idea about what's really around. But, I do have the Ted Williams Jim Thorpe card that came out, in 1952, I believe.
Yep. Jeff, we have a friend of ours, a mutual friend of Bob and I, named Mike Driscoll, who lives in Oklahoma and is who we consider kind of be that leading authority on Jim Thorpe. I mean, he has his notebooks from his school. I mean, he's incredible. He's got Jim Thorpe's personal notebook with pictures of his Olympic medals, but obviously the medals were turned over. The $1 million question no one has ever been able to answer: where the hell are Jim Thorpe's original 1912 medals? Because, as you mentioned, replicas were given back to him, to his family, when he was reinstated.
From what I have read and seen, no one seems to know where they are. And the Swedish guy who was declared the gold medal winner did not get those medals. He was given a separate, separate set of gold medals. So that's a great question. And while I'm speaking with you, I'm re-looking at the article I have here about Jim Thorpe at the pole vault. I'm curious to see if Mr. Driscoll was the person who Bob Wheeler was able to, get the film from, because I know he went to somebody in Oklahoma. But Bob Wheeler in 1967 was a guest in the home of Homer and Beth Ray, who were co-editors of the Yale, Oklahoma News, and they had known Thorpe, and so they had a copy of the Olympic film, and Thorpe had given it to them as a gift.
Incredible! Wow!
Wow!
Yeah. But I've heard the name Mr. Driscoll before as well. So it's all about making people aware, the awareness of
Absolutely.
many things. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the average American is aware. History of Native Americans has had great tragedy, especially over the last 100, 150 years, and history is complex and history is not easy. And as John Adams once said, facts are stubborn things. But Jim Thorpe's story is without a doubt filled with injustice, and it really should be, addressed.
Yep. I used that John Adams quote a couple weeks ago. I love that. It's one of my favorite quotes.
There you go. So, and on a personal note, if I could just bring up something not related to Thorpe. Staten Island had a NFL team here in the 1920s called the Stapleton Stakes. And
Ken Strong.
The athlete, Ken Strong was a member, and he's a member. We have a Staten Island Sports Hall of Fame here, and Ken Strong is in it. And it's funny because we've been trying to check out, some of my football guys are trying to find out, did Thorpe ever Island during that time period to play or to attend, and we just can't seem to find anything. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But boy, if somebody has something on that, that would once again be a great, holy grail thing here for Staten Island sports.
Yeah.
Well,
incredible.
Well, Jeff, we're almost
I love
out of we're almost out of time. I want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Great information, and again, where can people check out that petition for Jim Thorpe?
Yeah, just Google Bright Path Strong or Bright Path Strong petition. It's out there, and once again, hey, you want to buy some stuff? Some people would love to see the shirts and the clothing that they sell. It's really good stuff.
Jeff Benjamin, thank you for being on this evening. Great information. Joe, we're down to about a minute. Got to hand off to you our abbreviated 2 minutes. What'd you pick up on tonight's show?
Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. One of my favorite topics, Jim Thorpe, and the injustice that was given to him with his Olympic medals. Just thank you for being on the show, Bob. I think just talking to someone who's on a parallel path, not a collector like us, but just a historian, digging into something, and to hear that side of it and realize we've all come to the same conclusion.
Amazing, truly amazing. Well, we're out of time. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with a couple shows. Until then, check out our website, GridironGreatsMagazine.com.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.